Hey, welcome to another episode of the Rob Report. I'm your host, Robert Bob TV Brown. Before we get into the segment, by the end of this video, I want you to do a few things for me. First of all, if you like the video, hit the like button. Please do. If you don't like it, hit unlike. It's okay. Make sure you are subscribed to this channel. Sometimes, as Jimmy Dole would say, you find yourself unsubscribed and you need to make sure that you subscribe to this channel. Hit the notification bell right next to it so you can be notified when a new video is being dropped. Whoop, there it is. And more importantly, the super chat will be on for this segment. So if you want to donate toward the efforts of Bob TV, that's freely up to you. I do have a job, but any amount will help toward the growth of this channel. And more important, let us help you help us by introducing you to a program. There's a link down below that says Equal Justice for All. You're going to click that video link and there's some educational tutorial about a phenomenal program in America that is really making equal justice a reality for every citizen. So this program is phenomenal. The proceeds from you participating in the program will go back, 10% will go back into the Bob TV YouTube channel. So anyway, my name is Robert Brown with the Rob Report. Let's get into it.
Blue collar, white collar, black professors, white scholars, politicians, Dalai Lamas. Everybody in the whole wide world need hope if I be honest. I'm in that number.
Hey, good day. Welcome to another episode of Rob Report. I'm your host, Robert Bob TV Brown. Excuse the technical difficulties that I've been having, but I think we're good right now. So let me get into it. This gentleman right here, Joe Biden. That's right. Joe Biden, the man with the plan, who ran for office multiple times and got his butt spanked multiple times, and supposed to be the Democratic lion right now in the Democratic Party. But we're going to talk about Joe Biden today because it is very important that we take a look at Joe Biden's history. Now, we just learned in the news that they're teasing that Joe Biden is going to do what I said Bernie Sanders should do. Now, again, I'm not caping for anybody, but I'm just always talking about smart politics. If Bernie Sanders want to lock down a black vote, a black female vote, a black male vote, and get the advantage of any other Democrats, then he got to make Nina Turner his number one in my book. He got to support reparations, make Nina Turner his vice president. Not going to do it. He's not going to support reparations. So, you know, and I know he's 9 times 10, he's not going to make Nina Turner his vice president. So that would have been a no-go for me, even if I was voting for Bernie Sanders. So right now, I haven't picked my candidate at all. Right now, I'm still looking at all of them from every party. I'm seeing if anybody going to come from the wind, from the ground up, and really, really champion working people. Now, I'm normally a Green Party voter because the platform is normally championing working people. Downtown 10, I'll probably vote Green again, but I'm open. I don't vote on parties. I vote on individuals, and if you don't like it, that's you. If you want to vote on parties, that's fine. If you want to be sold out to the Democratic Party, that's you. Want to be sold out to the Republican Party, that's you. Want to be sold out to the Democratic Socialists or Working Family or the Green Party or the Rent Too Damn High Party, that's you. That's your personal choice. And if you want to put out this thing that say, look, if you're not for reparations, that's your choice. I'm not voting for you. That's your choice. Now, I kind of don't like the fact that you're saying you're not going to vote at all, you know, especially when there's people that do support reparations to the fullness. And a lot of times you want to give them, your whether race your vote, not voting, then empowering them with your vote so they can get some kind of numbers to begin to be a real opposition to the party who's not championing your cause. Now, I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden recently went on TV and he said this.
Cases even talk to one another. And it can't go on like this, folks. I know I get criticized. I'm told I get criticized by the new left. I have the most progressive record of anybody running for the if anybody who would run.
Now, let me stop you there, Joe. Joe Biden just said that he has the most progressive record than anybody running. Joe Biden just said he has the most progressive record than anybody who's running for office. Now, we're going to go into this so-called progressive record because Joe Biden's record is horrible. It's horrible when it comes to working class people, even though they call him working class Joe. It's horrible when it comes to the black community. And I'm going to prove that through this. Now, we're going to start right here with him saying that I got the most progressive record. But let's go take a look at Joe Biden in the early days when he were in government in Delaware and when he became senator. Now, we're going to go to the first video while Joe Biden was the governor, was the legislator or in Delaware.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a job to do. We all have a job to do. We speak with great concern about the drug problem in America today, but we fail to appreciate or address it for what it really is, the #1 threat to our national security. It affects the readiness of our Army, the productivity of our workers, and the achievement of our students, and the very health and safety of our families. America is under attack, literally, under attack by an enemy who is well-financed, well-supplied, and well-armed, and fully capable of declaring total war against the nation and its people, as we've seen in Colombia. Here in America.
Now, you got to understand this. I'm going to stop this for a second. This was Joe Biden joining Richard Nixon's war on drugs, which ended up being war on black and brown people. Because, of course, most of the drugs were coming from South America. It was a lot of black people that was pushing these drugs in the street. But the intermediate man, or the person in between the drugs coming from South America and the drugs in the street of the United States, were the government. It was the United States government funneling these drugs in. It's proven, tried, tested. You can go look, study for yourself. I'm not going to do all that. It's just a given. Running drugs here into the United States via boats, via airplanes. They put it in coffins. They put it in tires. You name it. You know, they were successful in transferring these drugs into the United States. Now, you got to understand, our government could have stopped this from happening, but they allowed it to happen because they knew the drugs were going to decimate certain communities. Sure, white communities were going to get hit by the drugs. Sure, rich white communities would get hit by the drugs. It depends on what kind of drugs. You know, cocaine and all that. White culture ate that up. Crack cocaine and other different type of drugs on the low end, mainly in the black community. Different types of heroin and all that cheaper made drugs really decimated the black community, Hispanic community, and things like that. But to declare war on drugs when you started the war yourself is very hypocritical. And that is our government. Now, again, listen to me again. I got to tell you all the time. I am not anti-American. I'm as American as apple pie. Don't like baseball, football, WWE, wrestling, you name it. I love my country. But I don't like what happens in our country from the federal government. So I do like some things the government do, but I hate a lot of things the government do not do. So then that's my thing when people try to call people anti-Semitic and all that. I cannot like your government, but I can love the people. I love the United States. I love my fellow countrymen, but I don't love the way my government handle business. I love people of all colors, all nations, all nationality. I may not agree with their government, but it has nothing to do with them. That's why I'm so anti putting sanctions on people because of what the government leaders do. The government leaders do these things. It's not the people. Yet we're going to pose sanction on countries to make the people struggle, hoping they'll turn their back on the government and push these people out. But let me get out. I'm getting off subject. I'm going over to Venezuela right now. Let me get back on Joe Biden joining Richard Nixon's war on drugs.
America, the enemy is already ashore. And for the first time, we are fighting and losing a war on our own soil. Every president for the past 2 decades, Democrat and Republican alike, has declared war on drugs. And each of them has lost that war and lost it miserably. They lost.
Now, he's going to go into the reason why they lost the war. But really, they didn't lose the war. They're just trying to play on your sympathy to get more backing of pushing the war up to another level. Why? Because they need more assault weapons. They need to do more horrible things to these communities in the United States. The war isn't outside. The war is inside. They don't care when it's outside. They care about it when it's inside. But again, let me go back. They are the ones who initiated this war on drugs in the United States. They claim they're going to try to stop it overseas. Don't get me wrong. They did do some fighting overseas, real deal fighters against the war on drugs. But they played these drug dealers. They played these cartels to their advantage. And that's how we got this mess going on in the streets right now. Now, things are a whole lot better. But I'm talking, it was real tough back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and the early 90s. 2000, it started to taper off a little bit, but it was rough. And look, I'm not going to front. I was part of that gang, man. I was, back in the 90s, man, I was hustling drugs myself back in the day. And I seen people get decimated. I did horrible things as a result. I would have crackheads go out and steal for me in order to get some crack just so I can have the best of the clothes, because I always dressed nice, but I wasn't willing to spend all the money. And what really hurt me one day is me and one of my homies were out on the block selling drugs, and it was Christmas time, and the lady was willing to sell all her Christmas gifts that she bought her kids for some crack. Now, mind you, I'm a dude. I mean, you're on the street and you're a lady and you need some crack. We'll have you doing all kind of things for some crack. But that I could not. That was the bottom line. I could not get to the point where I can take your kids' Christmas gift. You want some crack that bad? I will give you one. But I wasn't going to do it, because if I give it to her, she's going to come back again. But I just couldn't. And that was one of the things that weighed on me about getting out, because not only am I damaging a young lady with a bright future, but I'm really ruining somebody's mom or who had the ability to help them become great. And also putting them in a position where they'll end up being drug dealers. If their mom end up in jail and they don't have no money to take care of the household, they're going to hit the streets and start selling drugs too. And that was part of this drug policy that Biden is about to talk about. Let me keep going. Now, hang in there with me, because I'm not going to rush myself on this. This is a BOBTV expose on Joe Biden and his record. Because you think Joe is this great guy that's going to champion black people because he was vice president of Barack Obama. No, you got to look at the record, like I always tell you. Don't be fooled by the persona. You got to check out their record. They smile in your face all the time. They stab you, stab you in the back. Let me keep going.
Because they attempted to deal with only part of the drug problem. They lost because their initiatives were pulled apart by bureaucratic squabbling among their advisors. They lost because they always did too little and they did it too late. That's why the Democrats and Republicans in the Congress got together last year to write the law that required the president to give us a national drug strategy. The one you heard tonight. You heard him deliver it. We don't oppose the president's plan. All we want to do is strengthen it. We don't doubt his resolve. All we want to do is stiffen it. The trouble is that the president's proposals are not big enough to deal with the problem. His rhetoric isn't matched by the resources we need to get the job done. Quite frankly, the president's plan's not tough enough, bold enough, or imaginative enough to meet the crisis at hand.
Now, I'm going to stop right there. Now, this was right after the State of the Union with Papa George Bush, and he talked about his war on drugs. Let me tell you something. Richard Nixon had a strong policy against war against drugs, and that was mainly late 60s going into the 70s. When Gerald Ford didn't do too much after that, Carter didn't do too much after that. I mean, the whole Iran-Contra scandal, that was all about the drug wars. Reagan revitalized the drug war. Matter of fact, Nancy Reagan started the Just Say No program. How about your butt get caught on crack and try to say no? It ain't easy saying no once you become a drug dealer or a drug addict, you know. And why don't you live on the streets when you don't have, your mom is hooked up on crack and she's spending every little dime coming to the house, and you have to go out there and try to hustle some money. And you might be a young girl, 13 years old, and next thing you know, they out there selling their body just to get the money to take care of themselves, because mama can't take care of them because they're on crack. See, this is the whole part about the crime bill of Joe Biden, championed by Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, that decimated the black community. Now, and then the Republicans, they were happy for it. You know, it was these new Democrats siding up with the Republicans that was decimating the black community, Hispanic community, and what they call lower class white community, you know, in rural areas, and then, you know, as they call them, trailer park, you know, stuff like that, which I think is kind of classist to even talk like that. But that's what he's saying. He's saying that George Bush, his policies wasn't tough enough. All right, let's see what he's talking about should happen.
If you had a child in your family that was seriously ill, I doubt whether you'd call a family meeting to discuss what percentage of the family budget you were willing to spend to make him well. You wouldn't say that we can't afford to spend more than a penny out of every dollar the family has to cure the child. But that's exactly what the president would have us do. Spend one penny out of every tax dollar to fight drugs. The Defense Department spends $300 billion a year to prepare for a war we hope we'll never have to fight. But the president says he wants to spend only $8 billion next year on a war we're already fighting and we're losing.
Now, mind you, $8 billion back in 1989. Matter of fact, this was on my birthday, 9/5/89. Billions was a lot of money back in 1989. It's a lot of money now. But again, just like these Democrats and these Republicans getting together to spend money on stuff that, on anything but you and your needs. They just got to find some way to spend the tax money for anything but you. At the same time, people still dealing with health care. Can't get proper health care, can't afford it, going into debt. Same time, people still having a hard time going to school. The same issues that are going on today were going on back then, and they're still trying to convince the American public to allow them to spend money on unnecessary bullcrap.
The president says he wants to wage a war on drugs, but if that's true, what we need is another D-Day, not another Vietnam, not another limited war fought on the cheap and destined for stalemate and human tragedy. Now, I'm going to point out some specific things, 6 of them, that we find inadequate about the president's plan. I think the president has to join us in making a significantly greater commitment to these 6 areas to stem the rising tide of violence in America. And that's what it is, violence. First, we have to join together to ensure that drug dealers are punished swiftly, surely, and severely. And in line with what the president is calling for, we have to hold every drug user accountable. Because if there were no drug users, there would be no appetite for drugs and there'd be no market for them.
Now, as you see in this video, he's saying we need to hold every drug user accountable. So his first target is the drug users. Now, mind you, these people, a lot of people are doing, it's stupid, but a lot of people are experimenting. They're trying to find a way of escape. Sorry that it got to be some kind of drugs, but you want to hold them accountable. So what you do, lock them up, throw them in prison, and a lot of times they don't get off the drugs because they're selling the drugs in the prison system. So how is that holding them accountable? What else you going to do? Beat them up? Shoot them? Kill them? A lot of times you get on these drugs, it's a habit, 1 or 2 times, that's it. Your life is ruined off of one time trying a drug, but you want to treat them like they're criminals. Folks, these same things are going on today, but I'm talking about back then when Joe Biden was the senator of Delaware, and this was his State of the Union response to George Bush on not being strong enough on drugs. Yet he say he is the most progressive ever running. He's trying to champion that. A progressive would say, look, if you end up on drugs and you need help, we're going to find a way to get you off that addiction, because it's the addiction that drives you deeper and deeper into crime. Because you got to get that fix. You got to get that drug. You'll do anything. I mean, anything. When I was selling drugs, women were willing to do anything for some drugs. Anything. And it started with one hit, one sniff, one needle. Bowing down to peer pressure, letting somebody convince them to do something that they normally don't do. And that was it. And you want to treat them like a common criminal. Now, this is going back to his plan on Bush is not doing strong enough. We, the Democrats and Republicans, need to go beyond and do worse thing than Bush.
Let's take a look at what the real problem is. It's not just how many people are using drugs. As the president said, the number of people using drugs, cocaine in particular, is down in our country. That's true. But the violence associated with drugs is spewing out all over America. And that's terrible.
All right, so he's saying the violence associated with drug is just spilling out everywhere. Hey, Joe, now you sitting in your ivory tower back then. You're not sitting in the hood. You don't know what it's like. You wouldn't know what it was like. I didn't even live in the Bronx, but I lived in South Florida, and it wasn't pretty. So I can imagine what the Bronx was looking like back in the day. Houses was terrible, abandoned buildings as a result of drugs. And people were trying to do anything to get that fixed. That is a disease. And once that stuff hits your bloodstream, that's it for you. That's why I don't smoke. I very rarely drink. You'll never catch me doing drugs. I don't smoke reefer. I don't. If somebody wants to smoke weed, that's on them. But I don't do none of that because I'm easy to get addicted. I believe I'm easy to get addicted, so I don't touch it. So here he is talking about punishing these people because they're committing violence on the street. Look, you hooked up on drugs and you see somebody walking up to an ATM machine about to get some money out. Them drugs is going to tell you to knock them upside the head. It's not you. It's the addiction call. All right, let me keep going. This is long.
I know it's hard to believe, but this very day, violent drug offenders will commit more than 100,000 crimes on this day alone. And the sad part is that we have no more police in the streets of our major cities than we had 10 years ago. And what the president proposes won't help much. What he proposes is no increase over what the Congress has already approved last year. In a nutshell, the president's plan doesn't include enough police officers to catch the violent thugs, not enough prosecutors to convict them, not enough judges to sentence them, and not enough prison cells to put them away for a long time. That's why right now, 6 out of every 10 criminals who are arrested on drug charges have their cases dropped. That's why we think the president should triple the commitment that he's made tonight for police, prosecutors, and judges for our cities and our states.
So because you don't have enough prisons, you want to triple the police force. Now today they want to triple the police force and arm them like they're part of an army. Actually giving them tanks and everything. Actually having them being trained by Israeli soldiers to teach our cops to do what they do in Palestine with the Palestinians. That's on the table now, and it's happening, as you can see, in Ferguson and places like that. More money going to the police force. That's what Trump is championing. He's championing the same thing that Joe Biden is championing. So I keep telling you, there's no difference. The only difference is a DNR. So in this, Joe Biden was pushing for that. More police on the ground. Now, look, I work with the police department. I do a lot of workshops for NYPD in the community. And I work with state senators and legislators on certain things to help out the community. I am for community policing. I am for individuals policing the police. I believe people should have their cameras out and make sure the cops doing their job. And I'll do it. But to arm our police force like their military is wrong. And then he talked about we need more judges. We got plenty of judges. Okay. I can imagine the work caseload may be a little high, but you know, look. And then last but not least, he's saying we don't have enough prisons. This is where they started contracting with private prisons to house these people that are on drugs or these people that are selling drugs or committing these crimes. Yet these private prisons will work these people as modern slaves. You got private prisoners right now that's doing work for these major corporations and getting paid pennies on the dollar. Right now, you got to pay. You can't even go visit anybody in prison no more. You can't even touch them. Right now, you can't even see them through a glass now unless have a lighter sentence. But those who have heavy sentences, they actually have to pay to do a video call. A video call. You know, the video that you do on your phone, Snapchat and all that. They have to do that in prison and they have to pay for it. But all this stuff stems from legislating and these so-called politicians signing these deals with these corporations. The reason we have the private prison system, how the private prison system get funded, is because they land these deals with corporations so these prisoners can make their products. Case in point, Victoria's Secret. All these women thinking they're wearing these plush, beautiful underwear and panties and everything, and believe me, they're beautiful and plush. But they're made by prisoners. And I can go through a list of different things that are being made by these prisoners, yet they're getting paid pennies on the dollar. Private prisoners, the private prison system right now are sending these prisoners out to fight forest fires to free up the firemen from getting killed, and they only getting paid pennies of the dollars. But yet, if one of them die, the parents don't get insurance money for that. All this stuff started here, right at this point where Joe Biden is talking right now, saying that George Bush's plan wasn't rough and tough enough. Let me keep going.
Second, education. The president says he's increasing money for drug education because he knows what we know. It works. We found out that when students understand how harmful cocaine is, they're 5 times less likely to even try the drug. And right now, the drug education message is reaching only 50% of the children in this country. And the president's plan, for all the talk, will only increase our efforts by 5%.
Joe Biden, you want to know who knows from experience what it looked like to be on drugs? Kids in the hood. You don't need no elaborate education, put money in education on drug awareness to that point. You need to put more education on people just becoming more educated to the point where they're so stuck on goals and visions and going to college and getting a good job that they don't have time to really look at that. Most of the people here in the Bronx back in those days, they still went to school, but yet they had to come home to the horror of seeing an auntie shooting up or seeing an uncle fighting his wife, trying to take her pocketbook to go get some smack. So you see, this is what get me. These people sitting up here and these politicians sitting up here on that ivory tower don't even take time out to go to the hood. That's why, to me, if you're running for president right now and you're not going to take time out of your schedule to spend quality time in the black community, and I'm just going to focus on black. You Hispanic, you got to talk to them about coming into your community. Usually black and Hispanic community kind of work together. But if you cannot come to the black community and listen to the needs of black people and try to put that in your policy, don't ask me for a vote. I don't care if you're Bernie Sanders. I don't care who you were. You need to come here and say what you're going to do for us, but we need to tell you what we need first. Here, these people trying to tell us what America need to fight drugs, yet in the city, yet they don't even come to the city and understand what it's like to be in a city where drugs is rampant.
You know, drug education is the only vaccine we have against the drug abuse among our young. And can you imagine me sitting before you and saying, we're only going to vaccinate 50% of the children against polio or smallpox? We have to do more. We have to educate our children about the dangers of drugs. We have to start in kindergarten, because we know that last year 1 out of every 4 high school students in America tried drugs, and that the other 3 were prime targets of drug pushers. We can't afford to lose a generation while we're sorting out the budgetary priorities of this nation. We must do more, and now. Third, we disagree with the President's decision to cut back on our previous commitment to protect against drugs coming across the border, to cut the Customs Service, the Coast Guard, and the Border Patrol. We think we should do more to stem the flow of drugs across our borders, and we think we should go one step further. Let's go after the drug lords where they live, with an international strike force. There must be no safe haven for these narco-terrorists, and they must know it. Fourth, the experts tell us there are 6.5 million addicts, addicted drug addicts out there, and that they're committing thousands upon thousands of crimes. And under the President's plan, we'll treat only 19 out of 100 addicts. He talked about pregnant women. Well, his proposal would help only 1/4 of the children under the age of 16 who are addicted, and 1/4 of the women who are pregnant and addicted. We can do better than that to prevent the next generation from becoming a generation of violence. Fifth, the President has to take charge and end the bureaucratic infighting that plagues the anti-drug efforts now. Last year, for example, and listen to this, last year the Congress approved $5 million to protect Colombian judges, providing the kind of support that the Colombian Justice Minister, Mrs. DeGrief, recently asked for in Washington. Yet not a single penny of that $5 million arrived in Bogota, Colombia, before the Justice Minister arrived in the United States a couple weeks ago. And the President's plan does nothing to prevent such fiascos from happening in the future.
Now, if you don't know the story, Pablo Escobar is running for a political position in the Bogota government, and he went to fight against the charges that was on him, and yet they found some way to get to the judge. And actually, they took over the facilities, and you know the ending of that story didn't work out too well. It wasn't pretty.
He must eliminate the duplication among drug-fighting agencies and end the waste. That's one of the main reasons why we created the drug czar in the first place. The last thing I'd like to say about the strategy the President proposes is that we have to make a greater investment in the scientific community. The scientific community that's pursuing innovative approaches for fighting the drug crisis, just as we do for cancer and for AIDS and for Alzheimer's. They're already at work. In a lab in Delaware, scientists are working on new medicines that may block an addict's craving for drugs. And across the country in Los Alamos weapons laboratories, other scientists are exploring new state-of-the-art techniques to battle the narco-terrorist. We need more of that kind of scientific enterprise. We need to enlist America's scientific muscle in turning back the drug traffickers. You know, listening to both of us, this may seem all complicated, very complicated, but it isn't. We know what has to be done. We have to educate our children not to take drugs. Reach our children who are on drugs and get them off. We have to lock up the dealers for a long, long time. And we have to attack the source from which the drugs come. And we have to do that not a piece at a time, but all at once. And we have to do it now. And there's not any reason why we can't do that. We have the power, we have the money, and we have the knowledge. And we don't have to promise a world without worry or fear. We're not asking for that much. All we have to do together is to keep our promises and stay together. To put it in very personal terms for a moment, Joe Biden, me, I would settle for a world in which I could worry about the same kinds of things that my parents worried about, in which I only had to worry about the grades my children got in school rather than the drugs they're being exposed to, in which I only had to worry about the prices my wife had to pay at the supermarket instead of fearing that she might get mugged by a junkie in the parking lot as she loads her groceries into the car, in which tonight I could call my mom just to wish her pleasant dreams, not for the purpose of making sure she's safe in her own home. That's the kind of world I want. That's the kind of world you deserve. And there's no reason we can't have it. Thank you.
All right, so Joe Biden is building this dream scenario back then of a world without crime. You're never going to have that world, Joe. It's going to always be around because people are... We all fall sin short of the glory of God. Some sins are greater and some people's sins are stupid and they go out and do stupid stuff, and you just got to be prepared for it. And I'm saying that you're trying to say we need the money to be better prepared. And I understand where you're coming from, but the logic back then for Joe Biden is it's kind of mixed bag because he's in Delaware. Okay. And Delaware isn't New York. Delaware isn't South Florida, where you had to worry about muggings. Okay, people still mug, you know, and you had to worry about drugs. You don't worry about drugs as it used to be, but you still got to worry about certain things. And one of the biggest drugs right now is just plain out poverty and not being able to meet your needs. And people will whap you upside the head to take care of their kids. Now, this is the beginning of his idea concerning the crime bill. Now, he worked on the crime bill with Bill Clinton, and you got to understand, Clinton came after this, not before this, okay? All right, this is pre-Clinton. You know, Clinton defeated George Bush in his second election. So this was when Biden had no relationship with Bill Clinton at this time. And they were really trying to fight hard against this drug war. But a lot of time that money wasn't going to the proper places that it went to. The money for drug research, a lot of that money didn't go into drug research. And a lot of that money ended up being to drugs that most of these people that are on crack cocaine and heroin and all that stuff could not afford to pay for this for these drugs to try to get off the system. And a lot of times they went to jail and they put them right back on the streets. They knew they were on drugs. They knew they were serious addicts, yet they didn't do whatever they can to try to at least get them detox and get them off their drugs. Now, a lot of time they had to do time in jail and they went right back to the streets to do what they were doing before they left. Now, let me come out of this. Now, this is Joe Biden being tough on crime, his tough on crime talk. Now, Bill Clinton is in office, and Bill Clinton has wanted to do something about crime. George Bush, I'm quite sure that the Democrats and the Republicans said George Bush was not tough enough on crime. He's a little weak, a little soft, a little punk, and we need to have a take no prisoner mindset concerning drugs. And I can understand that. But like I said, how you approach drugs is not like you approaching regular government policies. We're talking about an international crisis back then. That still goes on to this day. Not to the extent that it did back then, but it still goes on today. We just got different type of drugs. You know, we got synthetic. You still got people locked up in jail for smoking weed. I mean, the crime bill really affected people over something small. Bill Clinton came up with 3-strike program. 1, 2, 3, you're in jail forever. Even if you're just standing next to somebody who had a bag of weed, if you happen to be next to them and you didn't even know they had the bag of weed, when they run everybody, when the cops come, they're throwing everybody on the wall, they're checking everybody. And if you were next to that person, you would still get the same time. If you were walking by a school and you had some marijuana in your pocket, you would go to jail for that. And you just walking by the school. You're not trying to get into school. You're not trying to sell drugs to nobody in school. You just a brother who just want to get a little hit, a little weed. And you just walk by the school and the cops throw you on the ground. They check your pocket. You going to jail. And if this is your third time, you are not coming out over a dime bag of weed. This was all because of the crime bill. Now listen to Joseph Biden and his strong speech on dealing with these drug dealers and these drug users, in his so-called fear for his family who live up in the bougie parts of Delaware where ain't nobody selling no drugs.
We must take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society.
Now, right off the bat, he's talking about black people. Now, one of our major talking points, especially when it comes to ADOS, is that anytime the black community did strive to get ahead, we strived in medicine, we strived in invention, we strived in education, started our own colleges. We built our own neighborhoods. We built our own, we had our own communities where we served our own. There were black Wall Streets popping up everywhere, and white supremacists, using the same talking points that Joe Biden is using right now, used that to run down something that was growing. And don't let these Negroes get too much power, because then we can't control them. Now, I'm sorry to my white audience. This is not to you personally. I'm talking about history in general. We're talking about some of our forefathers, mine and yours, and the mentality that they had back then. And some still have today. It's just a little low key. Now, he's saying it doesn't matter whether they had a shot. You know, because some people to this very day, the dollar between the white community and the black community is such a gap. That's why black people are calling for reparations, because they need to close that gap. Who cares about what great policies you have? That's just an equal rights policy. But still, financially speaking, the black community haven't closed that gap yet. Some people made it, but most people have not, because they didn't have exactly what Joe is talking about right here, the right opportunity. So what happens? What happens when when your mom is on drugs and then she get locked up because they came into the crack house and threw her out? Now I'm talking about real people who mother end up on this stuff, who had a bright future and made one stupid mistake that messed her life up forever. I know my goddaughter don't even know who her father is because the mom was on crack. And I'm doing whatever I can to be the closest thing to a father to her. And yet she was a crack baby. And yet she have to work hard to get the same shot as a white kid who parents probably wasn't on crack. Yet again, our government helped bring this stuff into the country and poured this stuff into the black community. That's why you got a lot of abortion clinics in the black community. You got a lot of liquor stores in the black community. You don't see them halfway as near in white communities. You think this stuff is by happenstance? You think this stuff was not strategically planned? You think it's just end up being that way? No. And here we go. We got Joe Biden talking about who cares whether they where they came from, whether they came from poverty or not. We got to lock them up. Now, Hillary Clinton, she kind of got hit hard. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of black people didn't vote for her, is because she called black kids super predators. Kamala Harris put that policy in effect while she was prosecutor, DA, and attorney general. She put the super predator policy in effect. She implemented the crime bill to perfection. Joe Biden helped write the crime bill, and he take no shame for it. Not understanding it was the crime bill that decimated the black and brown community all across the United States. And a lot of people are still in jail as a result of that crime bill. Been in jail for 30, 40 years. Not coming out. Not coming out because somebody saw that some man was hooked up on, doped up on cocaine, trying to rape his wife, and he killed his wife, and they threw him in jail for life. Yet they want to be all nonchalant with these policies because they don't primarily get the effects of the results of what happened when they had the drug wars, because their family was far away from it, yet it affected the black community and the brown community. Let me keep going.
It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons.
Now that sounds just like those Trumpeteers, the one people that sound like that love Trump. It don't matter. They're beating up our wives and they're just out of control. We got to get them Negroes. We need to bring them to heel, like Hillary Clinton said. Joe Biden is talking just like them, minus the MAGA hat. They're coming to our country. They're taking over. They're taking our jobs. And they're taking everything. They're selling drugs. They're running drugs into the country, and they got these sex rings, and they're bringing all the opioids. And look, I'm not discounting that. I'm not saying they're not, but it ain't the Mexicans that's just doing that. You know how many people that come from Crimea and different parts of old Russia and different parts of Europe that's running sex trades and running women as sex slaves? That ain't just in Mexico. You know how many people are sneaking drugs into this country? It ain't just in Mexico. A lot of that stuff is in Europe too. So, but here he is sounding like the particular Trumpeteer talking points.
So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street. That's number one. There's a consensus on that. Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision.
Now, how racist can you get? He comes up with these numbers. I don't know where he got this number. Probably paid some fake strategic, some straight fake analysis that's going to give you data to support what you're trying to get. Because they do that. They cook up numbers just to get you on their side to support what they're trying to do, because they need popularity. Well, used to need the popular support in order to implement a policy. Not that way no more. They could care less about your support. If they want to implement something, they're going to implement you. Kiss my behind. Most people were not for Trump tax bill, but they passed it anyway. So here he is saying this mess, talking about we got to get them on the streets. There's so many thousands of young people on the streets that's selling drugs. Now, he's not saying it, but he's really saying there's thousands of young black people in gangs selling drugs, and we got to run them in the street. And a lot of times they were not in gangs. They were not. They were just black people that they're running on the street. Look, this happens all the time. Cops throwing you on the ground because you're black, going to pin you down with some other person so they could get you off the streets. And that's exactly what Joe Biden is saying here.
Without any structure, without any conscience developing, because they literally are.
Let me go back. Remember, Hillary Clinton said we must bring them to heel. They're without conscience. Joe Biden said most of them don't have parents. You know why a lot of them don't have parents? Because a lot of them have father and mother. Because a lot of them were on drugs and they had the baby and dropped them off. Because you can't really take care of a child when you're strung out on crack. Case in point, my goddaughter. Her mom is taking care of her. Her grandmother, everybody pulling together, not even part of their bloodline. But they're pulling together to take care of her. And me as her godfather, I got to be the best thing to her father as she can, because she don't know her dad. So when you're on drugs and you're doing everything you can to get to get that fix, including giving up your body, and you end up getting pregnant, you think that man's going to come back around and help you? That man is gone. You're stuck with this child. You got to raise this child yourself, but yet you got to raise this child, and you're still dealing with that addiction. So Joe Biden don't know what he's talking about. All he wanted to do is get these people off the street, and how do you get them off the streets? Throw them in jail or kill them. Have the police force use this crime bill to get them off the streets, and that is exactly what happened. They was using their police muscles to get these people off the street, either by throwing them in jail or oftentimes taking them out.
3 more minutes. Because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. We should focus on them now. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets.
Now you heard it from yourself. Hillary Clinton said one thing about super predators. Joe Biden is talking to the Senate, saying these people are predators. Now, the face behind the predators are young black men. Wasn't that many girls selling drugs? Back then, there were some. But if they did, they were part of a men's organization that was providing them the drugs. Now, you're going to understand, it was the South Americans that was running the drugs here, South and Central America, because we wasn't growing the crops here. It was the white government. Sorry to say, it was primarily the white legislators that were allowing the drugs to come into this country, oftentimes using military planes and boats to get this drug to come here, and pouring it into the black and brown community, and assaulting the black and brown community with this thing called the drug war. I want you to think about that. But now you see the effects of it. You want to use this to do a lightweight genocide on black and brown people. Now I know this is going to get demonetized. YouTube going to say this is not family friendly. And if it get demonetized, I'm going to put it on my Patreon channel. But you got to understand the Patreon channel is a, in order to be part of the Bob TV brigade, you got to donate $3 a month to be a part of that channel. $3 a month. I mean, come on, man. You eat that on a hot dog and soda, okay? Or you can become a member of Legal Shield down below and watch the videos on that and become a member. And once you become a member, I'll make sure you'll get that one without becoming a patron, okay? All right, so they're gonna demonetize this particular video. And hey, anytime you tell the truth, advertisers don't like it. So this is not going to be an advertiser friendly video. All right, so you hear him? He said these are predators. Madam Secretary, we have predators. You hear that? And those predators are young black men that's on the streets, and we got to get them off the streets, because I'm scared. My mother, who lives in Delaware, in the upper echelon of Delaware, the Ritzy Tissy area, is going to drive all the way down there just to hit his mama upside the head. God rest his mother's soul. Ain't nobody doing that, Joe.
We have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not.
Now, you hear that? He even admitted that these super predators were created. He admitted that the government created the super predators. This is white supremacy in its finest, because there's no black supremacists. There's no black people at the top of these tickets in government at that time. You had a few, but I mean, come on. Ain't no black man running the CIA and NSA and Secret Service and all that kind of stuff. No black man was running that. Even when Obama was president, half black, half white, he still didn't run all those government areas of government. Black people wasn't running the FBI back then. You had one black man on the Supreme Court back then. His vote can't outweigh the rest of them vote. He's only one vote. So this is back then. Bill Clinton was the president. He the one worked with Republicans to come up with this bill to get these black men off the streets, because we started a mess from Nixon up to Bill Clinton, and the mess is out of hand, and we got to find some way to bring this under our control. So he came up with the crime bill. And then on top of that, they came out with welfare reform, giving the Republicans what they want. That's why Reagan said he was proud of. He said Bill Clinton was the best Democratic that ever lived. Know why? Because Bill Clinton went right along with his plan when it came to stuff like this. Sure, we had a big surplus and people was making money back then. That was great. That's the only thing I give Bill Clinton credit for. And they gonna call him the first black president. And because he played a saxophone and he's used a cigar on a Monica Lewinsky, sound like something a black man to do. But nah, bruh. Don't let the black face of Bill Clinton's presidency fool you, because that's all it was, blackface. Behind the scenes, they were cooking up this plan to get the black man off the streets. Now, like I said, there were some drug dealers, and some of them was tough, but a lot of innocent black kids were ran in to the ground as a result of being included in that whole bunch, as a result of people like Joe Biden and Bill Clinton and different Republicans like Newt Gingrich and all of them siding on with this mess. But yet, y'all think this man should be the next president.
Take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. And it's a sad...
Now, how can you say that they're far gone, Joe Biden? They're beyond the pale. It's a sad thing, but we got to do whatever we can to get these Negroes off the streets, because these Negroes are out of control. You might as well just call us monkeys. We got to get these out of control monkeys and put them back in cages, because that's just what you're doing. You're just saying it in a pretty way. That's why I don't take no sides, man. I'm a truth teller, and I got to tell the truth whether I get money from YouTube, whether I get people subscribing to me. I don't give a crap. I got on this microphone and got on this camera just to tell it like it is. I'm thankful. I'm grateful for my audience. I'm thankful. I'm grateful that we're almost at 10,000. I'm thankful and grateful for the people who support the channel. I'm thankful for that. But if I lose you over stuff like this, I just lose you. I'm not that way. Same thing with people in my faith. I'm a Christian, and they criticize me because I talk about politics too much. Not understanding, they sit there and watch CBN that talk about politics all day, and there's a Christian broadcasting network and the 700 Club. They talk about politics too. Yeah, they're going to criticize me. Get out of my face with that stuff, man. Let me keep going.
Commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society.
You hear that? You hear this? If that ain't white supremacist racist talk coming out of the mouth of Joe Biden, the vice president of a black man, or half black, half white man, let's be truthful. In our culture, we consider him black because there's no half. Do you black? You don't look white at all. But here he is, saying we got no choice but to take them off the street. Now, this was in 1993. Rob, that was a long time. It doesn't matter. Let me tell you something. People do change. People do change. But the people still get affected by the things that you did in the past. You got to look at your past and make amends for that. And a lot of people still affected. A lot of people lost their daddies. A lot of kids lost their fathers. A lot of kids lost their mother because of this stuff. Their dad got shanked in prison, and they never sold drugs a day in their life. They just happened to be a child in a house where the mama was selling drugs or smoking drugs. And the cops ran them all in, and the kids got put in the system. All right, let me start. I'm getting a little emotional over this.
And the truth is, we don't very well know how to rehabilitate them at that point. That's the sad truth. I'm the guy that said rehabilitation, when it occurs, we don't understand it and notice it, And even when we notice it and we know it occurs, we don't know why. So you cannot make rehabilitation a condition for release. That's why in our system, the federal system, you serve 85% of your time. It's a shame, but we don't know how to rehabilitate. But there is a consensus, and I will cease. A, we must make the streets safer. I don't care why someone is a malfactor in society. I don't care why someone is antisocial. I don't care why they've become a sociopath.
See, here he is. And you got to look at the passion that he's talking about this. So you can't fake passion. It's coming out of his veins. It's coming out of his heart. Joe Biden really means this. I mean, you ever been in a position where you thought somebody was your friend and then you pushed that button to the point where, man, it all come out. See that a lot in society. I had a white friend. He was my homeboy. And we got in a fight, man. We've been homeboys for a while. And we got in a fight. And when it got to the point where he got so to the point where he was so frustrated, he just started calling me a nigga. Somebody who I stayed at his house, ate their food. We went camping together. We went fishing together. We went to the beach together. And we get in some kind of fight, probably over some girl. And at the heat of the moment, he just called me a nigga in the middle of the fight. And like I said, they're going to demonetize me. So in the heat of the fight, there's a scripture say, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. They may seem like they on your side, but you push them to a certain point. You'll see whether they really on your side or not. It's just that way. You may have covered it all up, but deep down inside. Now, sure, can somebody change? Yes. Do I think Joe Biden changed being with Barack Obama? No. Because he's still talking the same talk, especially when it comes to progressive. Now, let me finish this video. I'm almost done.
We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society, try to help them, try to change their behavior. That's why we do in this bill. We have drug treatment and we have other treatments to try to deal with it. But they are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families. But we would be absolutely stupid as a society if we didn't recognize the condition that nurtured those folks still exist. And we must deal with that.
Now, you know me, when it comes to voting and picking my candidates, I don't care what party you in. I don't. I voted for a Republican over Bobby Scott because Forbes was doing more stuff for the black community in Virginia than Bobby Scott. He was a Republican. He poured so much of his money into the black community to help black kids. I supported him. And he's a Republican. I've done more voting for Democrats than you can think about it. But yet at the same time, these same Democrats that I voted for wasn't doing nothing for the black community. Yet there's some Democrats that I have supported and will support because I work with them closely. People like Louis Sepulveda. People like, Diaz Sr. is not running. I think he's retired, and he groomed Sepulveda to take his place. Congressman Vaca. And these are politicians here in New York City and the Bronx. I work closely with them. I've done workshops for them for the community. And I got one I'm doing the next week for one of the civic senior centers here in the Bronx on behalf of Louis Sepulveda. So I've worked with Democrats. And there are some okay Democrats. Now, you can go ahead and lump them all into the evil bunch. You can't do that, man. You can't do that. Because that's like saying all black men are predators, as Joe Biden just said. No, you can't do that, man. Yet I work with people in the Green Party. I've been voting Green for a while. You know, I vote on people's past, present, and what they plan on doing in the future. Now, looking at Joe, I've been looking into his past, and this is his past. Deep down inside, black men are a part of that community. Now, I could not find the clip, but there's a video of him talking about his opponent at that time in 2008, Barack Obama. Oh, he's clean cut, he's refreshed, but he said all these great things about Obama, then he came this but. He hated the fact that Obama was beating him, and him and Obama supposed to have been close friends at that time when he got into the Senate. And they are close friends. But do you understand that you can consider Joe Biden? This is his past. Now, he said he is the most progressive candidate to ever run. You can't claim to be the most progressive candidate ever when you push this crime bill that decimated the black community so hard that you take credit for it.
I'm told I get criticized by the new left. I have the most progressive record of.
He called it the new left.
Anybody running for the if anybody who would run. I didn't mean that.
Now you hear that? He said he have the most progressive than anybody who would run. In other words, if you did not run, or if you're about to run, and he's trying to hint that he's going to run, bad idea, because most of America is for progressive policies, and he is not. He is not for Medicare for all, single payer, at the point of exchange. When you go, they take care of you, that's it, you don't get no bill, because it's paid for by the American people. He's not for no-cost education. He's not for that. He's like, no-cost education, if you make a certain amount of money, you're going to pay. No-cost education. Public education, public college should not cost. He's not for getting rid of making prescription drugs free in the United States. There's a lot of things that Joe is not for, but there's a lot of things that Joe is for. He's a very heavy militarist. He's for military intervention. He's for regime change. He voted for just about every regime change you can ever think of. He's tough on crime. He's more tough on crime than Trump. He's more tough on crime than what's his name, David Clark, with the way he talked in the past. So he's not progressive. Yeah, he's gonna sit here and brag just now about being the most progressive candidate that would ever run. Dude, you trying to tell me you're more progressive than Bernie Sanders, man? That platform Bernie Sanders got, really? Do you know what a progressive is, Joe? Because progressive, you're a corporatist to the core. You sit here and say, billionaires are our friend. Billionaires are trying to crush the workforce, man. They're trying to kill unions. A progressive don't allow that. Progressives will do whatever they can to strengthen union. They'll do whatever they can to make sure workers have rights on the job. To the point that they'll even demand that workers sit on the board of a corporation. How are you going to run a corporation when the very top asset to your corporation is helping you make the money, but they have no say-so on how you run the company? So no, Joe, you're not progressive. Let me keep playing. Every election year, they say this is the most important election in our lifetime. Now, I wouldn't doubt this one may be true, just like the last one, because we knew, well, the last one, we were both getting a piece of crap anyway. Trump was doo-doo and Hillary Clinton was a turd. How do you vote? Turd or doo-doo? Which one? Both of them was crap. And this is where I keep telling people, get out of the TV and look at people's records. And then you judge whether they would have made a good president or not. You look at their records, how they legislate in the past, determine how they legislate now, and it determines how they legislate in the future. That's why I'm going through the past with Joe Biden. That's why I went through the past with Donald Trump, because Donald Trump ripped so many people off as a real estate developer. And for you to think he's going to do something for you, he ripped so many poor people off. Same thing with Hillary Clinton. Man, the way they treated Haiti, and man, guys, you got to stop falling in love with these politicians based on who they hanging with and based on their TV persona. People fell in love with Joe Biden because he was with Barack Obama, not knowing the horrible policies of Joe Biden. Someone was downright white supremacist. That's why you got to listen to them. Before I go, he sat here and talked about he's the most progressive.